口は左側です。開くの後足元にご注意ください。
JR 九州をご利用くださいましてありがとうございます。この列車は特急緑7号佐世保行きです。止まります駅は東北、武雄温泉、有田、廃棄、佐世保です。各車両は乗降口を境に前寄りが A 室、後ろ寄りが B 室に分かれています。皆様が安心して車内でのひとときを過ごせますよう、列車内での会話、座席を回転させての対面でのご利用はお控えください。皆様のご理解とご協力をお願いします。廃棄から終点佐世保までは乗車券のみでご利用のお客様は自由席をご利用ください。
That got me good.
You.
Before moving away from Newfoundland in 2021, I made it my goal to hike the entire East Coast Trail.
Oh, they have habanero sauce for 55 yen.
I only had a couple of months before my moving date, so I squeezed in a hike on every single day I possibly could. One thing I always brought with me on these hikes was my Zoom field recorder. There's so many amazing sounds that you notice when hiking, and I wanted to capture some of them as little mementos from my journey. It's incredible, though, how easily the sound of a distant truck on a highway can ruin the softest and most beautiful ambience. A few times, I remember hearing something beautiful that I wanted to capture, only to realize that once I stopped walking and just listened, the sound of a distant highway was present. Of course, this wasn't always the case, especially once I got deeper into a trail, but it always sticks with me because I remember one of the things that Connor and I noticed when we first visited Japan was how incredibly quiet the suburbs of Tokyo could be. At times it even felt quieter than when I was on the trail. It's simultaneously incredibly peaceful and a little bit eerie, especially when you know you're in one of the biggest and most densely populated cities in the world. As a kid, growing up in a suburb outside Toronto, I remember sitting in my sandbox and wondering if there was some way to turn off the omnipresent highway noise. It wasn't very loud, but if I just sat and listened, it was always there, whether I was in my backyard or at the park. But there was no way to turn it off. I could just go down to the creek where the trees would dampen the tire sounds, and moving water masked whatever was left. Now I live in Ottawa, in a 10th floor apartment facing the Trans-Canada Highway. And that noise is as real as ever. Because of that, I often find myself thinking about ways that cities can dampen car noise. Whether in Fukuoka, Tokyo, or Osaka, as soon as you get a little ways into the suburbs and away from a main highway, the sound of cars just melts away, and the sound of bikes, trains, and people gently takes over. I think it's a strange and special experience because in Canada it seems that the only way to escape car sounds is to go out to where the trees are the main inhabitants, and the rustling of their leaves is the new noise floor. Canada's a huge place, so there's plenty of quiet spaces you can go if you want to get away from the constant and intense noise of a big city. That is, if you have a car to drive there. But in the suburbs of Tokyo, people still way outnumber the trees. So, as long as you aren't right by an imposing highway, the noise floor is often just people living. Riding bikes, having conversations. Or at night, total silence aside from the odd distant and creepily slow siren from an ambulance. The noise from highways and cars, in general, seems to fade away much more quickly than in Canada. It's made me realize that cities can, in fact, be places that are pleasant and quiet to live in, if we build them to be that way. Of course, any of the city centers in Japanese cities are really noisy as well, but the ease by which you can escape that noise without leaving the city is pretty incredible. I hope to someday see more infrastructure in Canada to help dampen noise pollution from cars, because I think there's a lot of value in having easy access to peace and quiet where you live. And surprisingly, that's not exclusive to rural settings. I used to think that I didn't like living in big cities, until I experienced how peaceful they can be when designed with peacefulness in mind. I'm sure trains have a lot to do with that as well. Although, I do remember all of those squeaky train yard sounds for a few hours every night at our apartment in Fukuoka. But I found that those sounds were pretty easy to get used to after a few weeks. I haven't traveled too much outside Canada, Japan, and China, so I haven't been able to experience how other super dense cities handle noise pollution. But it makes me interested in seeking out the most dense yet peaceful cities and learning how they are able to achieve that. How much of it has to do with infrastructure, and how much has to do with people and their culture, or the level of car dependency. To me, quiet cities feel like a strange paradox, so it's kind of magical. The next time you travel, see if you can find a truly quiet area in whatever cities you're in. And if you do find it, cherish it. Because silence amid density is a pretty special thing.
JR 九州をご利用くださいましてありがとうございます。この列車は特急リレーかもめ62号博多行きです。止まります駅は東北、佐賀。
20時